And here's how I realized that it was a game changer. I got a call from my CPA. He says, you overpaid in taxes. How much did I overpay by? $87,000. How did I overpay by $87,000?
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right. Welcome back to the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast. My name is Randy Smith, and I'm your host today, and really excited to have Dr. Alex Tam with us today. Dr. Alex Tam is the founder of Absolute Integrated Physical Medicine. He's the co-founder of the Streamline team. He's the owner of Zephyr Equity Group. He's a podcast host. And why we have him here today is he is a passive investor with a lot of experience. So, Dr. Alex Tam, you're a busy guy. So thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today.
Hey, Randy, thank you so much for having me. You know, busy is what I've been told by my mentor is a blessing, right? It's we gotta feel blessed that we are busy.
I agree. I had somebody tell me once, if you want something done, find somebody who's busy and they will more likely get it done than the guy who's not busy. So yeah. Very good. Well, Dr. Tam, why don't you walk us through kind of your background and how you found this passive investing space, if you could?
Oh, of course. You know, I started off as a chiropractor, opened my practice May 27th, 2 days ago of 2009. So May 27th of 2009. And so we just celebrated our 14 years in practice, going into the 15th year. And we initially started off as a small chiropractic practice. And as we've grown over the years, we've triple sized in the space that we're in, but also added a lot of different services from like stem cell therapy to vitamin injections, have nurse practitioners in the practice now. But one of the big challenges that we had was at the beginning, I was always told to, start an IRA, 401k, right? And we did. But you rode the ups and downs of the cycle. There'll be ups and there'll be downs. And it seems like there are more fees than anything else. And eventually I started buying a single family home. I bought one in Reno, Nevada. And the amount of money that we were putting in, like, to just for the down payment was like $90,000 just for the down payment. But the monthly returns were like $100, right? On that one house. And we were thinking, my wife and I were like, there's gotta be I'm working my ass off for $100 a month. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And I went to a Grant Cardone conference, Randy, for the business. I went to a 10X Growth Conference in 2018, and it was the very first time he talked about multifamily investing and syndications. I didn't know what it was. I thought he just made up something, like call it syndication. And then I found Bigger Pockets, and from there, I started passively investing. But one of the key points why I wanted to passively invest was, number one, I wanted to invest for cash flow. Right? Number two, I want to put my money somewhere where it's going to grow and I don't have to manage it on a hard asset, not just some flimsy paper that's digital, right? And so volatile. And then the third thing was taxes. Oh my gosh. My wife is a real estate professional, and I didn't know that the depreciation on multifamily real estate can go against earned income that way. Zero idea what cost segregation is. When I realized, I invested into our first deal, and the same amount of money that I put into the multifamily or the single family home in Reno, it 4 times the returns, easily 4 to 6 times the returns. The next year I sold that home and put all of it into multifamily. And since then has just been investing into multifamily quite a bit, and until 2021, where we became more played more of an active role. But I love it.
Are you interested in real estate investing but don't know where to get started or think you don't have the time or money? Are you stuck in your W-2 because the golden handcuffs make it hard to walk away? If this sounds like you, check out impactequity.net and schedule some time to talk with the founder, Randy Smith. Randy went from massive income to leaving his W-2 through passive income, and he can help you do the same. www.impactequity.net.
I love it. So you covered so much ground, and it's a very similar path that I hear a lot of folks. It's very similar to mine as well. I started in single family. I had a tax issue. I was paying that dreaded 37% tax bracket to Uncle Sam. Decided to buy some single families. I had all this money tied up, and I was getting $100 a door, just like you mentioned. And inevitably, the roof leaks or the plumbing happens or whatever it is, and your cash flow is wiped out for years.
Yeah, it's gone.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Ridiculous.
So, but I think, I look back at that and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are you glad that you bought that first single family home, or do you wish you would have just jumped right into passive? Or would you have even known to jump into passive?
Wouldn't have known about the multifamily until I went to the 10X Growth Conference. So it was more like a mindset. The reason why I went there was to grow my business, to grow myself, to grow my mind. And when you hang around people who are growth mindset oriented, you really are exposed to opportunities that you would have never known about before. And I would have jumped into multifamily either way. I would have even dealt with the single family at all if I had known about multifamily. And it's, it was more of a headache than anything else.
Yeah. And I think that's a theme that I hear is like people find real estate investing through single family, and then they very quickly move over to multifamily. But myself, I'm really glad that I did the single family path because it makes me more passionate than ever before about this passive investing space. Now that I've gotten the calls where somebody stole the air conditioner or the $8,000 roof repair or all of this, I wouldn't know how good I have it as a passive investor had I not
appreciate it more now.
Right? Yeah. Now, you mentioned something which is the holy grail, where you've got a high income earner as a medical practitioner, and then your wife is able to designate as a real estate professional. So we can talk about this in theory, but I'd love to hear your experience on one, like how did she qualify as a real estate professional? And then two, what kind of benefit does that bring to the household?
I mean, the qualification of the real estate professionals, 750 hours per year, but we're active, in deals, right? So we're active in deals. So she qualifies. But what that comes down to, I mean, gosh, you look at the first big deals that we invested in passively. And here's how I realized that it was a game changer. Okay. We invested into this deal and I got the K1s at the end of the year. And then I got a call from my CPA. He says, Alex. I said, yeah. He says, you overpaid in taxes. I said, okay. How much did I overpay by? $87,000. I said, wait, what? Wait, what happened? How did I overpay by $87,000? And he says, well, you got these investments that you're doing, and it rolled into depreciation. And because your wife is a real estate professional, she qualifies for one, it rolled off $200,000 worth of, of your income. So I ended up overpaying 87 grand. So then the following year, I said, just roll it into the following year. We're already into that following year by the time he told me. I said, just roll it into this year. And when I realized what type of impact that did, it was a game changer. And I started telling my friends that, Randy, and they're like, what? And here's why I got into it actively. I had so many friends reaching out on how I've been doing it passively. Well, when I'm doing it passively, and I'm just telling another passive investor, I said, just go read this. And then they'll ask me really deep questions, right? How does cost aggregation work? I'm like, I don't know. I get a K1 at the end of the year. But when I got into it actively, I was able to learn how it works. Oh, there's different buckets, 5, 15, 20, And then I was able to explain it back to our passive investor, my other friends who are doctors, and they're like, oh. So I felt more confident doing it that way, but that's a game changer.
Yeah, no, and thank you for walking through that. And of course, I've got to say we're not CPAs or tax advisors or anything like that.
Right.
But as a passive investor, once you get a taste of accelerated depreciation, bonus depreciation, and that beautiful K1 that shows up with the passive loss, it will change your entire mindset about income producing activities, because you no longer need to make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year to live an amazingly abundant life. You could make almost half of that and have the same realized income at the end of the year, which, as a passive investor, I think is the single biggest benefit that I get from passive investing in real estate. And it's nice that our dollars are doubling every 3 to 5 or 6 years, but those passive losses have such a huge impact on the tax guy that in and of itself is a big enough reason to get in this space. So thank you for walking through that.
And what's even more powerful is that when I learned the power of the velocity of money, right? And I walk passive investors, when I talk to friends, I was like, you invest that $100,000 and say in 2 to 3 years, you can refi 60 to 80% of it out. You're still in the deal. And they're like, well, I got to pay taxes on that money. I said, no. That money is a tax-free event. And then you put that into another deal and then get more passive loss. I mean, that's just so powerful that we're not taught that in school. And I'm so glad, Randy, that you're sharing what you're sharing so that other passive investors will know about this.
Yeah, it's a game changer. I like that you talk about that single piece too, like the return of capital versus the return on capital,
right?
Which is very different tax designation, which allows you to pull those dollars out because you're essentially just getting your own money back from that deal,
right?
The same money you already invested. So that doesn't create a taxable event that you have to create. And the benefit is you keep getting your monthly or your quarterly distributions because you still have an ownership stake in that operating entity. So that's kind of that value of that cash out refi. And I call it the unicorn that everybody's searching for. Let me give you $100,000. You give me 5, 6, 7% a year until we refi. You give me most of my money back. And then it's likely that my actual distributions could go up, even though I've got my money back, which is, it's a game changer. It's a game changer.
Yes.
So, well, let's dig in if we can. You said, and this is kind of an interesting topic. You mentioned that when you first started investing, you were investing for cash flow. Mm-hmm. And I was a little bit different. I was in my W-2, I was making very, very good income. I technically didn't even need more income at the time. I was
right.
in wealth. I was looking for growth and wealth generation on the long term, right? But it sounded like you wanted the cash flow benefits as well. Can you talk about that difference a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I invest, yes, you could invest for appreciation, right? I've been told early on, if you invest only for appreciation, you're kind of guessing the market. Whereas any deal should be cash flowing from day one, right? Or maybe once it stabilizes, I should say. And not that I was needing the cash flow, but the concept of, how cool would it be if my cash flow passively can match my expenses, right? So the moment I said, wow, this concept is actually doable. And I set out to do that for 2022, where everything outside of the medical practice would cover our expenses, living expenses. And in October of 2022, we were able to achieve that. But that's because I was investing since 2018, right? I don't want people to think, hey, you started investing year one, it's going to happen. It took years for that to happen.
Sure. But if you think about that, from 2018 to 2022, you essentially were able to cover your core living expenses through your passive investing
Yes.
results. And once you reach that financial freedom spot,
Yes.
decisions start to like become much easier. Like the stress of the job weighs on you maybe a little bit less. You have, I like this term of work optional. When you reach that point where
Yes.
you can wake up in the morning and decide whether you need to work or not, or whether you want to work, which is a whole new freedom that I never thought that I would ever be able to experience. So yeah, congratulations on achieving
Thank
that
you.
in a very short time. I mean, it's interesting. I talk to guys, I had never even heard the word syndication until I was almost 45 years old.
Right.
And I turned 50 last year and I reached financial freedom in 5 years. Now, I was a high income W-2 guy. So
Yeah.
I definitely had, as Dave Ramsey would say, I had a big shovel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was really, really smart with where I was placing that dirt when I was shoveling, right?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of a difference. And it sounds like you've got the same mindset where it's not necessarily how much money you're making, it's how much you're saving and how much you're investing, because that's really your financial freedom path for the future, right?
100%. 100%. Because now I get to do it, not that I have to do it.
Right.
With the medical practice, the VA business. Now it's like extra ventures that we do. It's like, that sounds like it could be fun.
Yeah.
Right. And you go for it, So yeah, it's a complete mind shift that, that we have now.
I love it. So you've done, it sounds like that Grant Cardone event was kind of a transformational event for you.
Oh, huge.
But people don't just, those aren't cheap events. So was there some mindset shift that occurred before that you made the decision you're going to start investing in yourself or investing in the business? Or was it you saw Grant Cardone ad and you said, hey, I'm going to spend 10 grand and go to this event? Like, what did that look like?
The first time I was exposed to him was when I was trying to learn how to communicate with people. I said, I saw something where they said, you got to learn how to communicate better. When you learn how to communicate better on a different level, some people call it selling, right? Some people call it communicating. It's really educating, communication, all packed into one. And you improve in yourself first, right? So I read his book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. And I said, that's an interesting concept. I read the book, and the cover of the book was him sitting on his jet on top of the engine bay. And I said, well, who is this guy? And it was only the second 10X conference. I found out about him in 2017, except I couldn't go to the first one. So the second one I went to, and it was 2018. I've been to every single one since. And it's just been a life-changing event, the first one. But not only that, when you are surrounding your people in a room with other growth mindset thinkers, it's just transformational. Just being in the room itself, Randy.
I love it. I love it. I'm a huge mindset buff. I was part of a mindset community for the last year and a half. I've joined some amazing masterminds just recently as well, which really kind of talks to that. Is if you want to become an expert at anything, get around people that are experts at that thing. But if you really want to take your life to a next level, get around people that are experts in a bunch of different areas, because all of the mindset that they bring into their businesses will translate into your life as well. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, I love it. I love that and what I find is most people that are highly successful, and clearly as a doctor with multiple businesses, you're highly successful. You're hanging around with people that are doing big shit, right? It's not just people aren't watching Netflix 20 hours a week and get the type of results that you get. So,
no.
So good for you. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit. I'd love to hear kind of about your investing strategy. You mentioned multifamily, but are you 100% in multifamily? Do you invest in other assets? Do you like certain regions of the country or operators? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so far we've been only in multifamily, and it's the three things that I've looked at. On people were like, well, investing, do you diversify? And I said, yeah, well, you got to look at three things. You have to look at the asset class, right? operators, and then the location. I said, you can't have the same three all the time, like the same operator in the same location with the same asset class. One thing's got to change. I've stuck with multifamily because I know that the most, the underwriting side of it, I just know that the most. But we have worked with different operators in different areas. The focus areas that we have are in Texas, Ohio, Indianapolis, Nebraska. So that's where I know some good operators in. So I really love that space, in that Midwest space, where we're able to still, even though some of the, corner, Southeast, Southwest areas aren't cash flowing as well, the Midwest has just been really strong. And that strong and steady is what I really like.
Yeah, I like that you talk about that. And those are some markets that I personally don't invest in. I do invest in Texas, but Indiana, Ohio, Nebraska. It's interesting. You hear this theme where the Midwest states are going to be better cash flowing states, and then the Sun Belt generally is more appreciation or some combination thereof. And I think that's important as a passive investor to start looking at those different types of cash flowing markets, because if you are a cash flow investor and you're investing primarily in appreciation markets, there's not a whole lot of cash flow there. Right. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I've never heard anybody say Nebraska. It doesn't surprise me. I just don't know it. But Indianapolis, I've heard a lot of. Ohio, I heard a lot about Ohio. So that's really interesting. And I like that you're spreading your dollars across operators and geographies as well, because I think that's important. A snowstorm wipes out an apartment, then you've got something in another place that's doing just fine.
Yes.
So very cool. Now, you're also involved in a mastermind in a community that is solely focused on multifamily investing, teaching people how to do it, really sharpening the saw, so to speak, in that space. So what kind of benefits are you as an investor getting by in being involved in a community like that?
Oh, it's huge, because when you get involved in a community for education and masterminding, not only do you learn about, hey, this is how operators operate. And some people join these communities and they end up, you know what, I do want to practice real estate professionally and actively. Some people are like, wow, now I'm such a more educated investor. I believe every investor should be educated. They shouldn't just know, like, and trust and just, hey, here's $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, right? I believe that you should know what you're investing in. Warren Buffett said, don't invest in anything you don't understand, right? And that's the same thing in real estate is, yes, you got to understand the market, how numbers are, are the numbers a fluff? You've got people operators, where they can say, oh yeah, we're going to just go in and raise rents. Well, if you're just going to go in and raise rents, how come the last guy didn't just go in and raise rents?
I love it.
Do they not like money or something?
Right. Or even still, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to drop all the expenses. I'm going to cut them by 20%.
Right.
Like, what makes you think you can do that on a property?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Like, why and how? How do you believe? Yeah, like you said, I'm going to go in and drop it by 20%. I'm going to raise the rents by 30%. Now we're at a 50% margin compared to when we first went in. How does that work?
Right. Very good. So you got into the community. You actually learn how to underwrite these deals, and you're around people that are operating at a much, much higher level than you are in the space. So you're very similar to the Grant Cardone situation. Is you're learning from people that are doing what you want to do at a much higher level. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I joined underwriting pods. Different groups, just so I can see how they're underwriting deals as well.
I love it.
So you can really see. Yeah.
So I'm curious with that because, I personally only work with very large operators that have very, very complex underwriting structures. Do you find that your education has helped you, I guess, perform due diligence on your passive investments at a much higher level than you would have without that type of training? Or
100%. See, even though the large operators operate at a more complex underwriting, underwriting's underwriting. If you understand how to look at the spreadsheets and multiple tabs in the underwriting, you'll be able to catch things that just don't make sense. Whether you're underwriting a 50 unit deal or you're underwriting a 450 unit deal, right? What kind of financing are they talking about? Do the rents that they're going for make sense? And you can look up those comps, and you can also have an understanding. Say if someone's looking in Arizona and it's like, hey, 50 units and above, usually the expense ratio is at about 30%, right? 40%. But the bigger units may be at 45, 50%, right? And do those numbers make sense? If someone says, hey, I'm going to operate, if normally they're at 45 to 50%, and someone says, I'm going to go in and operate this deal and we're going to drop it at 30%, something's not making sense. So you have to understand some things. And not saying you have to know everything, but you got to be able to look at the big picture and understand, does that actually make sense? Does someone going in, rents are at $1,100, they want to raise it to $1,500 within the next 3 months without doing any CapEx
Sure.
and improvements?
Sure.
Why? How?
Yeah. I love it. Good stuff. So let's dig in real quickly. Gosh, the time just flies on these, but I want to get into, here we are at end of May, early June, probably maybe June by the time this is published. A lot of things changing in the marketplace. Interest rates are crazy. What do you see? What are your thoughts about the next, call it, 6 to 18 months in the multifamily space? Where do you see the trends going?
I think the trend is that people who are passively investing really have to get educated on the operators and what they're doing. Because the times of, I'm going to buy a property and it's going to appreciate is gone, right? A lot of people got caught buying towards the end of that, that roller coaster ride. And then things can dip a little bit. And you've probably seen a lot of capital calls.
Yep, absolutely.
More recently. Some people got caught on that downside. So having passive investors, vetting their operators, understanding the cycle. There's not as many deals coming up, but there's always good deals as long as the numbers make sense. So you got to really know what you're looking for. And right now, I would buy more for cash flow versus appreciation, because it's taught us that appreciation, people who were shooting for appreciation a year and a half, 2 years ago, if they're having to sell this year or next year, it's not going to pan out.
Yeah. They're going to be in for a rude awakening, no doubt. So
correct.
Very good. Okay. Well, good. Well, thank you for that. I agree with you. I think there's always good deals out there. Generally, if people have strong track record and they've been in the space for a long time, they know how to underwrite these deals, and they're still finding good deals. Granted, they might not be finding as many good deals, but if you're a passive investor, I believe it makes more sense to keep your dollars in the market, consider like the benefits of the dollar cost averaging of your investment dollars. And you're going to have some home runs, you're going to have some base hits and some doubles. And it's possible that you have some that could be walks, but I'll take a walk all day long versus having my dollar sitting on the sidelines, getting just completely crushed by, interest rates doing what they're doing. So, really, really good advice. Thank you for that. So, well, let's, if we can, I do like to cover just a few quick questions at the end of every one of my episodes. And I'd love if you have one kind of go-to education piece that you suggest for passive investors. You mentioned education is so important. So where do you steer your investors to start or continue that education process?
I would say the first thing is I recommend a book. There's a couple of books I really like. Passive Investing Made Simple by Anthony Vicino, and also The Hands-Off Investor, Michael Burke. Is it Michael Burke?
It's Burke.
Or
Yeah.
Burke.
Now that you've said that, it is Burke. Yes.
Burke. What's his first name? I forgot. But
oh my goodness.
I
Yes,
forgot
I
his
won't
first
remember
name.
it now, but we'll just say Mr. Burke.
Mr.
The Hands
Burke.
Off Investors. Yes.
Right. Those are two great books that I have read, and it really helps me as a passive investor.
Okay.
And if they want to read and dive in a little bit more, there's also the Joe Fairless book, right? The best ever syndication book. That one's a bigger book, a little more deep dive into it.
Yeah. I was looking. It's it's a 3-inch book that is very dry reading, but very, very detailed. So yes, great book. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any particular podcasts that you like that maybe focus on economic trends or where this multifamily space is going?
There's a lot of people on Bigger Pockets. They talk about the trends, looking at the forums, right? Neil Bawa is actually a really good trend. He looks at the trends. He looks at so many data points. And I like to look at his really podcast and what his outlook is. So I think people should just be in the space, just be surrounded by people and read on books. Listen to podcasts like yours that's dedicated for passive investors, right? I mean, just to get just get in the group of people who are doing it, and let that osmosis sink in a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you find 3 or 4 good podcasts to constantly have on when you're driving to and from work or whatever it is that you do, if you throw in an Audible every once in a while, like definitely Brian Burke, I think is the name of the other.
There you
Brian
go.
Burke. Those will give you the basis. And then it really just comes down to like getting to know, like, and trust somebody and I like to say, I sit on the sidelines and I watch people for a long time to see how they act. And I think that's a really good way to kind of get a good feel for people. So yeah, thank you for those. I think those are great resources and ones that are mentioned quite regularly. So that just continues to confirm these are good resources over and over again. So, well, let's see. This is kind of a fun one. Do you have a recent bucket list item that you've checked off your list, or do you have one that you're hoping to soon?
My wife did. A lot of places that we go to, she picks where to go. For me, I'm along for the ride. I'm more like, hey, I love focusing on our business growth. She loves going places. Last September, we went to Alaska, to this place called Katmai National Park, where people are like, oh, the fat bear contest and all that. And we went out there and walked out in the middle of all the wild bears. And to my surprise, thank God for all the salmon out there, they're not attacking people left and right, but it was really a unreal experience to be out there with these 600-700 pound bears walking around.
That's awesome.
So,
that is awesome. Yeah, very cool. Alaska is a place that I've not gotten to yet, but definitely have it on my bucket list as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Well, very good. So, Dr. Tam, thank you so much for coming. You've brought a tremendous amount of just great content to the group. I love your energy and enthusiasm for the space. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Randy, thank you so much for having me.
All right. And to our listeners, as always, thanks so much for joining us today. We continue to hope that you get educated and inspired by this content, but find your own education path. But more importantly than that, take action, make the commitment to invest in that first passive investment deal and continue to move down that path of decreasing your dependence on your W-2. It's done amazing things for both myself and Dr. Alex Tam, and we're sure it'll do the same for you. So thanks for listening today, and we'll look forward to connecting again in the future. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.